Hey folks, Doug Blake with Body Design University. In today's video, I want to talk to you about intensity. Yes, intensity, because I had a conversation with somebody recently, a trainer, who was we were just kind of talking, and he kept bringing up the concept of, well, when I train like this, it's more intense if I do this, and the word intensity kept coming up, and it kind of made me think that this term, this word, is often misunderstood. Because for the most part, we use the word intensity in our training. And we're talking about resistance training, although you will find a lot of folks, even in the cardio respiratory world, will talk about more intense training, or they have a higher intensity of training when they run a certain distance or a certain speed. But in general, we talk about the word intensity. I just want to make sure that we clarify what that word actually means, because it could get very confusing for the trainers. And of course, if you're talking to your clients, they can also get confused. So let's kind of unpack it a little bit. The concept of intensity, right, in the world of resistance training, in the world of powerlifting, in the strength field, right, in the strength training world, right, those folks, those athletes, for instance, that are Olympic lifters, again, like I said, power lifters, the concept of intensity is not like you would probably see in the bodybuilding or the fitness world. It is not a subjective term. So that's what I wanted to go over with you today, is the idea that intensity is not a subjective. Technically, intensity actually means the percent of 100% max all-out effort on a particular exercise at a particular weight. Get it? Versus what I know, I always talked about intensity, because if you're a bodybuilder, you talk about how hard a workout was. So we equate intensity with this perceived sense of how difficult a workout was. And therefore, intensity is seen as a subjective concept. So you get the idea. Technically, when we talk about intensity, it's an objective concept, meaning that if I do a bench press and my max, the one weight that I can use, do one repetition on a bench press is, say, 200 pounds, then I am working, when I do a single rep at 200 pounds, technically I'm at like 100% intensity, right? I mean, that's all I can do. Therefore, objectively, a 200-pound bench press for one repetition is about as high of an intensity I can get. Then the term intensity is now going to be used objectively to talk about particular workouts that you are going to do at a percent of that one rep max weight. In other words, try and make this as simple as possible. If I can max out at 200 and I do a set of bench presses with 150 pounds, which is a certain percent of my max, I am at objectively a certain level of intensity, right? So the intensity of my workout is now based on a percent of my max. 70% of my max for 5 reps is less intense than 80% of my 1 rep max. Now, that is sort of the objective way that you can understand the concept of intensity. So when we're doing, say, a periodization schedule, and we're working on a microcycle that has us doing, 2 weeks of this, 3 weeks of this, we are going to modify intensity. And the way we modify intensity is by looking at the percent of the 1 rep max that's being used. I hope that makes sense. So this concept of intensity that we're talking about, the objective concept, is what we use when we start to equate volume and intensity. Okay, you've heard this before. The higher the volume of the training, right, the more reps and sets we do, generally the lower the what? The intensity. But not subjectively. We're talking about objectively. If I'm going to do, quote, higher volume training, I'm going to do higher repetitions and generally fewer sets, right? So if I'm doing 15 repetitions, 20 repetitions, how much weight resistance am I going to use on a particular exercise that I'm going to do 15 to 20 reps with? How much weight compared to, in reference to my 1 rep max, am I going to use? Well, obviously less. Therefore, it is less intense. So intensity in this case, when I start to use it in comparison with volume parameters, is objective, and it's based off of the percent of the 1 rep max. Okay, I don't want to get into any more than that. I hope you get that. Technically, when we talk about intensity as an objective variable, we're using it in comparison and referencing it within the context of the total volume of the workout. Now let's move over to what we know intensity is, which is that I don't care how much weight you use. I don't care how much, man, if it feels harder, it's more, quote, intense. So I'm going to do a high intensity training set. I'm going to do high intensity interval training, right? In that case, the term intensity has a subjective value to it, so to speak, if you want to say it in that way. In other words, if I train hard, I don't care if it's 5 reps or if it's 50 reps. If I feel like it really worked me really hard, it was more intense. In other words, the more volume you do, see how it's different than over here when I was talking about it from an objective standpoint? If I do higher volume by the end of my workout, I'm going to feel like I had a really, really intense. I'm going to get done with a set, right, of tricep push downs, and I got to the last one, whether it, by the way, whether it was 10 reps or with lighter weight, 20 reps, and I get to the 20 reps, they're both intense, right? They're like, really, man, that was such an intense set. That was incredible, man. The pump in my tricep, yada, yada. Get it? So keep in mind, objectively, intensity is generally considered, we look at it as a percent of the 1 rep max for that particular exercise, and we will use that objectively, again, generally during like a periodization schedule. We're going to use that in conjunction with and referencing contextually with volume, higher volume, lower intensity, i.e. the use of a resistance that is a percent of the 1 rep max for that exercise. Again, we're going to use that generally in athletic type of training type of scenarios. Then there is the more common sort of colloquial subjective use of intensity, which simply means that it was a really hard workout, and it's always a really hard workout, irrespective of the amount of weight I used. It's generally based on the volume, i.e., right, if I do lots of sets and lots of repetitions, even high repetition sets with lower weight, I am going to say that it was really intense, especially if I got a great pump and I feel like I'm, worked out really hard. So you get the idea. Objective and subjective. There it is, folks. That is intensity for you. Now, look, if you got through this video, you understood what I was going over, the explanation, and you got a pretty good idea of what I was trying to get across to you, please, in the comment section below, type the word understand, right? And that kind of helps us, knows that you engaged with the material. And by the way, if you have any questions or comments on this particular video itself, go ahead and leave a comment in there as well. Keep in mind, every Wednesday night, just so you know, every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do an exam study. It's a Quizlet Live. We use Quizlet and we put it into a format that allows us to make it a little competition. So please come on board and participate in that. It's a lot of fun. That could help you in your certification exam taking process. Keep in mind, we want to help you to become industry leading personal trainers. And by the way, there's a little link below in the description, right in that box right below, right? And that is there to help you if you need to come on board and apply, just as a, for instance, to Body Design University. Let us know, click on that link and get all the information that you need. As always, have a great weekend, and we will see you next week. Bye.